Welcome to Nonprofit Stories, inspiring tales from Silicon Valley. We will explore the transformative work of nonprofit organizations and leaders who are changing our community by tackling some of the most pressing issues facing Silicon Valley. So without further ado, let's dive into this exciting conversation. Today, we welcome Dr. Prima Rao, the founder and CEO of Aquila Health of Silicon Valley. Their mission is to provide holistic health programs that empower underserved women to harness their inner resources and create change for a brighter future. Thank you to our sponsor, TradeMyHome.com, for their community commitment and for making this podcast possible. In the heart of Silicon Valley, known for its tech success and wealth, healthcare is a big problem. 1 in 4 women who need help can't see a doctor regularly, leading to more ongoing health problems that go untreated. Mental health issues are horrible, 30% worse than the rest of the country, but only 15% of these women get the help they need. Also, only 40% get the reproductive health care they need, which leads to more unexpected pregnancies than in nearby areas. These facts are more than just statistics. These women urgently need more support.
Dr. Prima Rao, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sharad. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity.
Please tell us a brief history about your organization. Who do you serve and how did it all begin?
Sure. Thank you. Aquila Health is a 501c3 organization started in the Silicon Valley, and it serves the women who are underserved in our communities. So we started in 2015, and to think about how it began, we have to connect the dots.
Sure.
Because it started off with a concept. It was the concept of the koshas. And koshas, it has been explained in the ancient texts and basically talks about that fact that we are not just the physical body. We are also the emotional, the mental, the vital energy, and the spirit. So basically, we are 5 layers. So the physical, the body, the breath, the mind, the intellect, and the spirit or the bliss sheath.
Sure.
So these are the layers. So when I first became aware of it, I was working as a research scientist in the biomedical device industry. So this concept I did not understand it very well initially, the depth of it. So that quest made me go into just reading whatever I could find on this and led me to Ayurveda. And through that, I was even more motivated because this seemed more, all-encompassing. So I went for a PhD at that time in psychology with the focus on health studies, which those days it was called complementary and alternative medicine, and which Ayurveda was part of it. So that's what started my journey. But during my PhD, that's when I became aware about stress and how it impacts all the chronic illnesses that we see. But I also learned that stress management tools are there and skills are there which can combat the stress. So that was a very key information. And at that time, I was also volunteering at a free clinic, giving behavioral education. And I could see in the underserved population, chronic illness was indeed the problem there. And, that was very self-evident. Also, I worked as an intern at the Institute of Health and Healing in San Francisco. And at that time, when I was there, we were publishing a paper, an article on who uses these complementary and alternative medicine modalities, or CAM. And it was made clear at that time, at least, that it was accessible to educated people, actually women in particular, and those who were affluent because they had to pay out of pocket. So that was also a revelation that these underserved people will not get it. But how did I come about knowing about underserved women or people? is not only through that free clinic, but I used to volunteer at homeless shelters. And in that shelter, we could see, people in really sad states. Once for Mother's Day, we actually had a little program where we treated the women with manicures, pedicures. We just made them feel happy for that day. All these connecting the dots made me start Aquila Health a long time ago. So, and as you mentioned, our mission is to provide holistic health programs to these underserved population, to empower them so that they can gather their inner resources and create brighter future, but also long-lasting future. In a word, Aquila itself has meaning. Aquila means whole or complete in Sanskrit, which is an ancient Indian language. And therefore, our tagline is holistic health. So if you talk about the domains that we're in, it's holistic health, it's women, and also the underserved population, those who are financially disadvantaged.
And what is your personal passion behind serving the organization?
Okay. So I would say for me, it's a byproduct of my spiritual journey. Aquila came to me later in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really with the intention of wanting to give back whatever education I had or whatever experiences I had. And that was the intention behind it. And it seemed like it had purpose, meaning, and there was joy to it. And I'm not the only one. Others who work on this are similar. So one of our first board members, she was a yoga practitioner. And she was motivated to work in this project because it served that yogic lifestyle that she was cultivating to give back, be of service. But, practically speaking too, I'm a woman. I have, as everybody, gone through a lot of stressors, especially living here in Silicon Valley as a wife, mother, a career person, and managing a home at that time. Actually, we were building a home too. So it's all compounded. But I had the tools that I could use. But still a balancing act, as for everybody, this process of stress management. Our population that we serve is the underserved women. Now, these women either have financial difficulties, they can even have health challenges, or they're in a phase of life, for example, they might be pregnant, or they're young mothers and they don't have anywhere else to go. So they might have relationship problems, whatever it is. But you can imagine that their stress levels would be even more higher than we can think of. So this is the population that we wanted to serve. And one thing I wanted to mention is, especially in the homeless population, the head of household being single mothers is much greater. So we had a lot of women who were leading households, and you can imagine, again, a lot of stressors there.
Right.
And one last, I guess, motivation was, and it is a strong motivation, is I've seen examples of disempowered women and how their lack of awareness of how to manage it, really the quality of life was not that good for them. So those are all the reasons I think that motivates me to go further in this field.
Share a story where your organization made a difference in someone's life.
Okay. So, our product or what we serve is through workshops. And we provide 1-hour workshops through our partner organizations. So we go through shelters and such, and we provide these either virtually or in person. So in a sense, we see sometimes they're transient population, like in homeless situation, they're transient. We may not get them every week or every other week.
Right.
So I can tell you how the feeling is when we feel that we have touched somebody.
Right.
So for me, when I do the facilitation, I feel that when the other person has probably tears in their eyes because they had a aha moment or some realization. Or even pre-pandemic, I have to be honest with you, at the end of the class, they would come and hug. That was an understanding. There was a heart-to-heart connection there. And that was very significant. And that propels me to move forward. And I think facilitators are all doing the same thing. They're giving their experience and education and giving their heart, their feeling of connection to the other people. But, when we want to scale in this worldly world that we are in, we need to have some data.
Right.
So for that, we also provide, we ask the clients to fill out a survey after every workshop. So in that, we have quantitative and qualitative things. So in terms of quantitative, we score anywhere from like 4.7 to 4.75 out of a scale of 5. Mm-hmm. So we're pretty doing well there. And in terms of anecdotal information, we have many. We have many coming from the facilitators themselves or through these surveys and so on. And I'll narrate a few. So at a homeless shelter that we are currently serving in San Jose, we've been serving there since, I think, 2016 or so, off and on. So I remember having, in this shelter, they're not encouraged to make connections with everybody. They actually don't trust each other.
Oh my God. Okay.
Because they're, for example, a small thing, there'll be a fridge that is common and they don't want things to be stolen that's there, things like that, the territorial things. So they're very wary of each other. But in this workshop, when we have discussions and all, they honestly look at the other person and say, oh, this is what your story is. I didn't know that. Let's go for a walk afterwards and let's find out about each other. Or let me take you to my church. You're going through a difficult time. Let me take you there because there are people there who can help you. So the social support is being built up in that little interaction that we had because we're coming from a very neutral position. Mm-hmm. We are not government. We are not the homeless shelter or wherever they are. We are very neutral. So it's they can be themselves with us. And in the same shelter, over the summer months, I met a lady. She had come all the way from Colombia as a refugee. She didn't speak English, and she has come, recently with her daughter, I believe, and her grandchildren. And the first class we were talking about homelessness. It was actually a facilitator who had been a homeless person before.
I see.
So you can see the impact that can have. And somebody else was translating. And she was in tears throughout the whole thing because she thought that somebody understood her plight. So we felt the connection there and we were able to help at that time. 2 weeks later, we go there. And this time we had an activity. Just a neutral activity as a stress management tool. And she was so happy because there was something she could do from start to finish. And she was beaming with joy with that. So, even in that class, they could get that experience of joy. So that's a positive thing. We have been in other places, like, for example, this joy that they experience, I think, we go home afterwards, so we don't know what happens afterwards. But in another place where we serve, it's called Sienna House in Santa Cruz, where these pregnant women stay and young mothers, the director tells us that, after the workshop there, the whole day, the mood's a little lighter. So, we know it's lasting. Let's see, we are at cancer resource places. There's one in Berkeley that we are serving. And, these women have this hardship of the diagnosis of cancer. They Google, they have done all sorts of work on them, but they appreciate our content because it comes from a different perspective, a holistic approach. So they appreciate that perspective. We have also been at substance abuse rehabilitation centers before, and this was during the pandemic. So it was all virtual, but the impact is still there. So we had provided a lot of workshops. We had gone through a lot of workshops with them, and we were focusing on one activity at that time. And the activity was vision board.
I see.
So vision board, we give them instructions what to do, but what do they envision for their future is the question. And these people took it so seriously. They did their homework, and then it was time for them to present. And I remember this one woman, she wanted her life to be of use. In other words, she wanted to share her life as a substance abuser and as a person who had gone through the rehabilitation. She wanted that to be something that benefits others so that they don't take the path of the substance abuse that she had taken. So her life, she wanted to matter, is basically what it is. And then she also, this is a tough place because had they not been there, they would have been in jail. That was the option. So it was pretty serious. So she had a business proposal of what she was going to do to sustain herself after she got out of this rehab clinic. The eyes lit up when she was speaking about it. I want to do this, I want to do this, and so on and so forth. So it's wonderful to see such optimism and enthusiasm and, the inner conviction that you want to get out of it. So these are some stories I can share. And I think ultimately, the time we spent with them, they might have been the invisible population. So the time itself is precious,
right,
where we consider them important, consider them on par with us.
Sense of belonging.
Belonging and connection, exactly. They just want to speak and their voice to be heard. They want to matter and they want to live life on their terms. They haven't had a chance to do that. So it's very inspirational to see such things or hear such things.
Worried about the dilemma of selling first or buying first? TradeMyHome.com, powered by Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty, has the solution. With our guaranteed 24-hour cash offers, you won't risk owning 2 homes or being homeless. You can buy first and sell later. Are you upgrading or downgrading in the next 3 to 6 months? Text PAIR to 408-740-7400 for a free and no-obligation professional equity appraisal report, exclusively for Nonprofit Stories podcast viewers. For more information, visit TradeMyHome.com or call 408-740-7400. Remember, at TradeMyHome.com, your home is sold guaranteed or we'll buy it. For the next episode of Nonprofit Stories, featuring Thomas Bakewell, the Executive Director at Lupus Foundation of Northern California.
Lupus disease is an incredibly complicated autoimmune disease. And quite frankly, if they find it...
Lupus Foundation offers programs designed to meet patients and their families' social and educational needs in English and Spanish, in person and online.
That creates tissue and organ damage at varying levels, of course. But the organ...
Check out our next full episode on Wednesday at 5 o'clock Pacific and 8 o'clock Eastern on YouTube and Apple Podcast.
Why is holistic health important?
Okay. Well, first, let's define holistic health. I think we talked about the koshas. I'll keep talking about it because that's what the whole basis is. So we are not just the body. We have the breath or the vital energy, the mind, intellect, and bliss. So all of these components are important. We are multidimensional, right? So when we are multidimensional like that, and these layers are interconnected. So that's the key. I'll use an example. Let's say if we see somebody who's angry, there might be other things going on underneath that outburst of anger. There could be sadness, loneliness, whatever it is. And we teach all this in our workshops. So, but what happens? The breath becomes shallow, it becomes irregular when you are having an outburst. Your body suffers too. Your heart is racing at that point. It might have started in the mind and the emotion level, so that's also disturbed. So with all this, how is the intellect going to intervene with all this? It has no place. And forget about the bliss. It's far from it. So this is the scenario where every aspect, because if the mind is perturbed, every aspect is affected. But the good part is with holistic health, all can be remedied. So with education, with awareness, a person could start with breathing, with the breath, some deep breathing to initiate this process of remedy. So what happens, the deep breathing can calm the mind at that point, which also leads to the body being more stable. And breath is so amazing that it's a bridge between the body and the mind. It's very powerful and it's free. We have it within us. So once that happens, the body is stable, the mind is calm, the intellect, which is the rational part, can interject and explore, why is this happening? Is this worth it? Is this worth? Or they might remember the last time they had an outburst, the consequences of it, and it's not attractive. So even that awareness can stop that domino effect. And if this person has gone through enough of these iterations, maybe they will even go further deep within and say, what is the root cause? Why am I getting angry like this at this person? So that can lead to further transformation. So you see, that's why the holistic health plays a role. Sure, you can have remedies for short term with other things, just focusing on the body or the mind or anything. But with holistic, it's a longer term change and transformation. So that's why holistic health is important.
And how do you cater to the unique challenges of women?
Before we go to that, I want to mention men and women all experience stress, and they are equally remedied through holistic health practices. But what may be different with women is the social conditions that they are facing, or maybe even the conditioning that they have gone through in their childhood and young adulthood and so on and so forth. So that might be the difference that we see between men and women. Now, with women, I have to tell you why I focused on women. I've mentioned some amount of it, but there was a time when I was involved in founding a women's group. And this was not the underserved. It was women in our own communities. But the observations were amazing because, first of all, they were interested in self-care. They were thirsty for this knowledge of self-care, how to better themselves and so on. Second thing what I noticed was they were more engaged in conversations when there were women around. They were able to be more authentic and had their defenses down and able to communicate better, which was amazing in this day and age, I feel. Maybe they were older. And the third thing is that the remarkable thing is they were feeling more empowered. In this community that I was in, there were also tasks that we did. There were responsibilities. And traditionally, they wouldn't have accepted those responsibilities. But because they would just go behind, let the men handle it or whatever. But in this, it was only women. So they had to empower themselves to do this. And that built up the leadership. And it's been going on for 20 plus years. Now you see the leadership happening within that community. People who you would not think would take on those roles. So that was the observation. So in this homeless population, again, we see that they're thirsting for knowledge for self-care. They know, they have heard of yoga, they have heard of meditation, they're thirsting for that. And also, for our workshops, the main component is engagement, because that's the only time they are going to capture and reflect their inner wisdom. So that has to happen very freely. They can't be inhibited. So again, that's one of the things that is very important. And in terms of empowerment, I think it comes naturally once you have more authentic dialogue to get them to think, because they're in a very challenging situation. They have to get empowered to get anywhere. Otherwise, it'll be a loss. for them. So I guess that's how I view it. That's how I view it, and that's why the way we handle them might be different. And to tell you the truth, when we go to these shelters, they want programs. There aren't many programs like that. So they have asked us, and we have included, I think one time a man just wanted to sit down in the class. And it was interesting because people didn't speak up. And then there was a situation in the virtually during the pandemic when we were there. We had no control. We were not there to monitor. 2 men just wanted to hang out there. Mm-hmm. And you could see the energy changing.
Right.
So, it does impact that way. And actually, there's one grief workshop that we do. And it was very well received by the women because they really could purge some bad feelings. So the homeless shelter said, we really want it for the men. So this young facilitator said, okay, we'll just try it one time because you're asking so many times. And it was a different scenario. It was like very, very, like they were very defensive. So it was, you can't get to the inner thing. And I should not generalize, but this is what the observation was. Obviously, there are wonderful men who are able to open up and connect and so on and so forth. But I'm talking about the group dynamics of it.
And how do you cultivate resilience and inner wisdom?
Okay, that's what we try to do in our workshops. So resilience, when you think about it, it is about adapting to difficulties and challenges, both internal, many of it is internal, and external, right? So I think the best way to do it is through resources and skills and tools. And that's what we specialize in. And what do we mean by resources? It could be concepts, even simple talking about stress and how it affects each part of our body. That's resource. That's becoming aware of what's going on with you. There's plenty of topics. You can just imagine for each of these layers, you can go deeper and deeper and deeper. And many of it you can use science also to use to share. And in terms of tools and skills, again, there are plenty, and that's what we work on. So if, for example, for body, we teach about progressive relaxation or a body scan. So when you're under stress, scan your body to see what's happening. Or we talk about movement is another thing. We don't usually move our bodies, and many times it's stuck there. Stress is stuck there. So that's another valuable tool. Of course, yoga and qigong, things like that are very valuable at multiple layers.
Right.
Then a skill for the breath would be pranayama, which is, it could be like alternate nostril breathing, or it could be box breathing. Many kinds of breathing exercises I told you about how important breath is. Mind, we've all heard of mindfulness. That's a very important tool. Guided imagery or visualization, those are tools as well that we teach. And for the intellect, I would say the discussions that we have with open-ended questions, those are valuable, or affirmations, positive affirmations. And then for the bliss, meditation. It is so surprising that when we take surveys, they appreciate that meditation aspect because it's something not familiar to them. Right. They haven't done, but they get something out of it because, it's going within. That leads to the inner wisdom part. Basically, you have to go internally. What does that mean? You have to stop going externally. Mm-hmm. So the senses are all outward focused. So try to not get distracted about what the senses are doing or your thoughts about your surroundings or other people or things like that. It's getting away from that external focus and focusing on yourself or in your inner world, if you want to call it. And again, these also can be helped by silence. And if you cannot manage silence because the mind will be racing, you can focus on breath as a way to tame the mind, if you want to call it, or walk in nature. Nature is a wonderful remedy for many things.
Right.
Just focus on nature. as I mentioned, meditation, guided imagery, all these are tools that you can use to go inward. And even if you can't do any of this, just honestly evaluating your thoughts and feelings.
Right.
Just go deeper and deeper with that. That's going to lead you to that inner resource.
And what specific programs do you offer to help those in need?
Okay. So as I mentioned to you, we have workshops. And these workshops can be virtual or in person. They range. Like, for example, we have a whole range of workshops on the koshas themselves. So we evaluate each aspect, the body, the breath, the mind, intellect, and the bliss. We have 8 workshops related to emotional intelligence, which talks about recognizing emotions, regulating emotions, managing emotions, self-affirmations, and things like that. We have another series of 6 on mind-body medicine, different aspects of it. We have another program which was developed by a DO on stress. So it has some allopathic elements to it as well. So these are many of them. And of course, I talked about the modalities. They themselves, you can go and teach yoga every week. And that's a class. Qigong, the same thing.
Right.
Or knitting and crocheting, because these are all stress management tools, or arts and crafts, or self-massage. We have self-massage or movement and dance. It's a wide variety of them. But I have to say, with the workshops themselves, of course, every workshop has these usual components, icebreaker and so on and so on. But we introduce the concept. Just a very little time we take to introduce the concept. Mm-hmm. It could be through story, or it could be facts or quizzes or whatever it is. But there's a self-assessment piece. So where are they in this time, in this concept?
Right.
And then we have open-ended questions to facilitate the discussion. And the important part is the activity usually involves them to go inward, as we talked about it, to find out how they really feel and how they want to change. And there's also a life application portion where how they are going to take and improve, going on future. So it's really providing information towards the transformation. So it's all, so our objective is to provide the information, but they have to do the work to transform. So I think it depends on where they are. Like in the cancer support community, they're very interested in finding out all the facts. They'll make the notes and everything. And in the homeless shelter, they just want to be present at that time, take all that in. After they go, they don't necessarily want to do homework. Mm-hmm. So it depends on what it is. So we are now in homeless shelters and family shelters and drop-in centers. We are at the cancer centers. We have been in transitional homes. We are at the pregnancy place. We've been in substance abuse, but there's so many more places to go.
Right.
The domestic violence shelters, even hospitals that serve the underserved women, or VA, or even jails.
Right.
So there's a lot of scope for that.
And what is one common myth about your organization in the work which you do?
Okay. I think one common myth I would say is these kind of holistic programs are offered everywhere.
Right.
When I started, this was in 2015, it was not there. And we had anger management classes or parenting classes. Those were 2 main things that they were asked to do. And you would think over the years it should be more prevalent. It is gaining traction, but not still not like that abundant. So that's one myth. I think in the cancer support places, there is much more of these, and there are different groups providing what we provide holistically. They might do the breath part or the Qigong part or whatever, but we are providing all of it. So, and I would say, even adding to that, another myth might be that who needs this? Who's going to listen to it?
Right.
But they do.
Right.
By our surveys that we see and the interest that they have, it seems like they are looking for it. And as I mentioned to you, everybody is doing it, but who can afford it? that's the problem. So yeah, I think stress exists. I always keep saying stress exists. So we'll always have a role, and because of the stress management tools.
What one advice will you give to the community you serve?
I was reflecting on this, and I would say, just this week on Tuesday, we were at the homeless shelter. And usually we try to get them to talk, but in between we try to facilitate. And there was a woman who was a domestic violence survivor, a victim. And even though she had devoted her life to her children, she had lost custody of them. And it was very sad, a very intelligent woman. She had lost custody and she was homeless now. So she was devastated. She was trying to find meaning. Why am I doing this? What is going on? And even in stress management or stress resilience, there's a term that's used. It's called hardiness. How do you promote hardiness? And we used elements. It's very intuitive, but I'll use those terms to explain. So they talk about hardiness being influenced by 3 C's to manage stress. And the 3 C's are commitment, control, and challenge. So by commitment, and this is the advice we were giving her, acknowledge that you are in this situation. This is happening.
That's the first step.
That is the first step. But this too shall pass.
That's true.
Right? And then the second thing is have faith in yourself. And whoever you trust, you have to hang on to something. And also, this is the third part we were telling her, it was very hard, is don't expect. Like, that's the thing we all have to learn. Desires are what causes problems for all of us. But in that situation, she was saying, how can I get custody of my children? How, all that stuff. You have to do your work, but don't say it is going to happen this way. You have to persevere. That's the other thing. Patience and perseverance is necessary. But also invest in yourself. This is a time when you can say, okay, I'll take 2 steps backwards and let me see, what do I have? What do I have within that I can use to get a step up, right? And then control. And that talks about seeking information. And that's why she was in this class. She was in our previous class too, and she found it useful. So embrace what has been told to you. Shore up your energy to activate your body and mind. This is the time not to be lethargic. It's the time to take action to get out of this thing. And finally, the third aspect was challenge, is you have to take on this challenge, because life as it is, if you don't, another thing will come along to make you approach this challenge. So that's important too. And understand that this is your mission at this point. This is your mission. Make it your mission that, I'm going to get out of this homeless situation, whatever it is. So this is really prepping you, supporting yourself. And then finally, you really are the hero of your journey.
Right.
You really are the hero. Take it as that. This is your mission. You are the hero. And in fact, we were telling her, because she had so many questions of what we were talking about. And, she talked about her childhood and what she knew before were answers. Now it's not working. So we were telling her, you're just in a cocoon now. You're a caterpillar phase. You're going to build up. You're going to emerge as a beautiful butterfly that you are. So I think those positive affirmations are what is needed to hang on to get to the other side. So that's kind of the advice, depending on how receptive they are. We will tell parts of it or all of it, and then we'll follow up with tools as well. Because if we say all this, they need to internalize it so we can guide them through meditation or imagery or visualization, where they internalize it even more and make it more useful.
Well, Dr. Prema, it was such a pleasure speaking with you today. Keep up the good work and let us stay in touch.
Thank you so much, Sharon, for this opportunity. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the podcast and acknowledging the impactful work of nonprofits in Silicon Valley. Please subscribe and share this episode with a friend. Thank you to our sponsor, TradeMyHome.com, for their community commitment and for making this podcast possible. Until next time, remember to support local nonprofits.